Welcome to Still Speak Podcast. Good evening, everybody. Actually, this might be super late for you all by the time this goes up, or it might be morning or tomorrow, but I'm recording this on the night of the 21st. I did a midday update on the Gabby Petito case earlier today. This is now my second update and my longer update for the day. And the biggest update is that the autopsy officially confirmed that it was Gabrielle Verona Petito, who was born on March 19th, 1999. And the manner of death is homicide. We did not get a cause of death today. The cause is dependent on the final autopsy report, and that could take weeks or a month due to toxicology. But they had enough to make a determination of homicide. Now, sometimes autopsies can be wrong. In this particular story, because it's high profile, I'm going with there was something pretty obvious to show that it was homicide, whether it was gunshot, knife wounds, strangulation by hand, where she actually had hand markings on her neck, or a ligature was used, maybe like a shoelace, or any type of blunt force trauma that was not consistent with an accident. It can also be multiple things. We recently saw in the Gannon Stout case, which is going on in Colorado, 11-year-old Gannon had been shot, stabbed, and had blunt force trauma. We don't know yet. And again, high-profile cases, they know that it was homicide, right? And I'm going to go ahead and guess that that's accurate, okay, until proven otherwise, at least. And this information takes every theory that involved someone not harming Gabby off the table. And by that, I mean any theory that included like an accidental death where she fell off a cliff or a cannon or into a body of water. It takes off any theory that she killed herself, any type of suicide. And obviously, any theory that involved her living off the grid, choosing to stay behind, and what have you, those types of theories are off the table as well, because we know that she's deceased, and we know that she was killed by someone. And so, again, this shrinks it down quite a bit from the theories that we were talking about just 3 days ago. And to note here, homicide can be intentional or unintentional or self-defense type homicide. I'm not saying that's the case here, but those are the different types of homicide. As far as we know right now, is Gabby was killed by somebody, another individual. I'm going to finish telling you today's events and updates, and then we're going to go back to theories again now that this has shrunk down quite a bit. I made a video earlier today, and I told you that today started out with law enforcement returning to Carlton Reserve to look for Brian Laundrie. They were not there yesterday looking for him. They were at his parents' home executing a search warrant, and they had suspended the search for him yesterday. And so we've seen them return today, and they started on the other side of the reserve. And this time, they were working their way in from that side. And this area is 25,000 acres. That's a lot of acres. A lot of acres. And there's parts that you can see from the helicopter view where there's a very thick forest areas. I mean, you can really live out there for quite some time if you're prepared. That being said, it's a very rough, wet terrain. There's alligators. Some areas have 3 to 4 feet deep water. There are snakes and all sorts of other animals. And if you're not familiar with Florida, alligators are no joke, and they're in almost every body of water. They actually travel from body of water to body of water. And, I would not want to sleep out there. It's basically like a swamp. Hell nah. midday today, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis tweeted, quote, "At the request of Northport Police, my FWC law enforcement has been assisting in the search for Brian Laundrie. I have directed all state agencies under my purview to continue to assist federal and local law enforcement as they continue to search. We need justice for Gabby Petito," unquote. So that was actually a big development that I think not a lot of people realize was a big development, because basically what this shows is that Northport Police is adamant. They're driven and motivated by them finding Gabby deceased to now locate the person she was with, who knows where she was and knows what happened to her, right? And so their goal now is finding him. We have her, we need him, and we're not going to stop at anything to find him, dead or alive, right? So much so that they're contacting the governor to say, we need more help. We need more boots on the ground, so to speak. We need as many resources as possible to find this guy, right? Because the public wants justice for Gabby, and they want him found, and we want to handle this case, solve this case, etc. And of course, Ron DeSantis is not going to tell them no. He's going to say, yeah, I'm sending you any resource that you absolutely need. So that's a pretty big development, and I think that was kind of overlooked by a lot of people. And also around this time, the FAA actually closed down the airspace over the reserve. And up until then, they were allowing, news camera, helicopters, and things like that to fly over. And it was basically described that they basically were putting up a lot of drones, because this area is so large, and again, there's a lot of pockets of forest. There's no way, even with tons and tons of people out there looking for him, that you can cover every single inch, and look behind every single bush and every single tree, and you can easily blend in back there. So they're going to use those drones to get closer, to zoom in, to cover certain areas that they can't get to because it's too dangerous. So these people are really working in bad situation here because of the water and because of alligators and snakes, and one of them can get hurt looking for him. So they're going to use these drones as much as possible to avoid that, because that's the last thing you need is now one of the agents or officers or search crew to end up seriously injured in the middle of all of this, or possibly even deceased. The search concluded around 7 p.m. and they said that there was nothing to note. So basically they didn't find Brian, and as far as we know, no evidence was found. I'm not totally sure they would have told us that they did find evidence. And I told you earlier today that they're now calling this a criminal investigation. They did not actually say this in words. They said it on their post. And obviously, it's now a criminal investigation, right? Because Gabby has been found. She's no longer missing. We know where she is. She's no longer with us. And currently, she's at the coroner's office, okay? So we also know now that she was killed by somebody. So there's a confirmed crime that has been committed. Therefore, this is no longer a missing person case. It is a criminal investigation. It doesn't mean that it's a criminal investigation, and now that automatically means that Brian is a suspect. He's still a person of interest. You have to remember that, they need forensics. They need the DNA. They need to process all they took from the home yesterday. They have to go through all the digital footprints, like hard drives and phones and internet searches and all that. And then there's also the autopsy and what that showed. Did she have DNA under her fingernails? Did she have DNA in her neck? All those things, right? They need something that's going to connect Brian to this crime. Because even though this is a homicide, and the majority of us believe that it's probably him, right? The majority of us do. they still have to be able to prove that in a court of law if he's not dead and this goes to trial. They need to prove that it was him and that she wasn't killed by somebody else. So they're going to take their time. They're going to go through all that evidence. And as far as we know, this can change at any time. He's still a person of interest. But I can get off this recording, and right now they could be saying he's now a suspect. Overnight, they can say that. Tomorrow morning, they can say that. The day after tomorrow, they can say that. It can change at any time. So them saying criminal investigation is simply because we now know a crime was committed against Gabby. Neighbors actually talked to the media a little bit today. They expressed frustration over the case and what it's caused in their neighborhood. I don't think they're, upset that the story is so big about Gabby. I'm sure they think it's important, but they were just basically expressing what it causes to a neighborhood when something like this is going on, because now you have helicopters out there constantly and search warrants being executed with like 20 FBI agents on your street, and you have all this media and protesters and people with blowhorns, and meanwhile everybody else is trying to just live their life, right? They're not involved in all this. I'm sure they want justice for Gabby too. It's just that, we all still have to live our day-to-day life, and they have all this going on outside. So, quote, trying to go to the store to get milk, trying to get out. The cops are like, you have to go around the block. You can't drive through here, and, stuff like that, unquote, is one of the neighbors had said to the media. And another one said that he needs to come back, meaning Brian, and surrender himself. Quote, absolutely he should turn himself in. Turn yourself in. They're hunting. They'll find you, unquote. Now, there was another neighbor, Charlene Guthrie. She lives across the street from the laundries. And I don't know if this is the same woman I saw yesterday in the footage outside the laundry home, but I'm not going to lie, this woman gave me a little chuckle, because when the house was swarmed with FBI and they were doing the search warrant, she was sitting outside on her front porch area in a lawn chair. I mean, all she needed was popcorn. She was had front row seat to what was going on. Now, I don't know if this is the same woman, but she was asked about what she was feeling after hearing that Gabby was found to be killed by somebody, that it was ruled a homicide. Quote, I'm really upset now because they should have absolutely come forward now. I mean, I just can't believe they didn't do something. I'm really angry that they let this go and that everything was so natural and they remained so normal through the whole thing, while they were here until he went on the run. He mowed the lawn. Him and his mother went for a bicycle ride around the block. I mean, everything was just normal life once he came back. And I just can't get over the fact that it seemed like nothing bothered them. How could you do that? Unquote, said Charlene Guthrie. And then she, of course, noted that she knows that, Brian is not accused of any crime and that he's not a suspect. And then she basically goes on to say that, well, yeah, but it's not looking good for him. It's really, really bad for him. And so those are the neighbors. And I forgot to mention to you yesterday that in the search warrants about the van and the external hard drive, it was mentioned that Gabby's phone had not been turned on for 15 days. And the last time that it was on August 31st or September 1st. So as a reminder here, their van was spotted on the 27th of August by the vlogger people who saw it off a dirt road in the Spread Creek area of Grand Teton National Park, where Gabby's body was eventually found. That same day, the 27th, was when a text was sent to Gabby's mother about Gabby's grandfather, in which who she thought might be Gabby, called the grandfather by his first name of Stan. And this alarmed the mother because it didn't sound like Gabby, because why would she be calling her grandfather by his first name? And we found out that she was kind of shook by that text in the search warrant about the external hard drive and the van earlier this week, but we got access to that yesterday. And then on the 30th was the odd text that said, no service in Yosemite, which is nowhere near where they were supposed to be. And we now know that Brian returned back with the van on September 1st at 10:27 a.m. He was caught on a traffic camera picture, which means if he drove the 35 to 36 hours that it takes to get from that area to Northport area of Florida, where he only stopped for gas, he had no bad weather, he didn't experience any traffic or any car accidents on the way, and he drove straight through, which is absolutely possible if his adrenaline was pumping. That means that he left that area about 10 p.m. on the 30th. But to give this a little leeway here and add in possibly some traffic along the way, bathroom break, and whatever. Okay, we'll give him a little bit of time. Sometime between the afternoon and evening of the 30th, he had to have left to make it back to Florida by 10:27 a.m. on September 1st. So if her phone had not been turned on since the 1st or the 31st, right? That was right after this vague text of no service in Yosemite on the 30th, and then that was it. And that would have been the time that Brian was driving back home. So you have to wonder here, personally, I do, I thought about this earlier, if he was the one to have sent that text to kind of buy himself some time or to throw the parents off course of where she is. It lines up that he ditched the phone after that text on his way out of that area, right? Because if her phone didn't turn back on, if he threw it out a window somewhere, it would have remained on for a period of time and then died. And it just lines up. It does. So there is that. And, the family lawyer for the Laundrie family, Steve Bertolino, I told you last night there was a press conference today scheduled for 1 p.m. As soon as I was done recording, I came back and told you that I found out that it had been canceled. And he basically said that after speaking with the FBI, he decided to cancel it. Now, there's a lot of speculation on why he would do that, and I don't know the answer, obviously, but I think it's possible, since Gabby's autopsy was being performed today, and that we would most likely have the manner of death, or the manner and cause of death today, that the FBI could have asked him not to do that, right? Because that's distracting off of Gabby, and if he's going to go out there and say, somebody else did this, my client didn't do this, it's not really appropriate time. And it also shifts the focus to Brian, not Gabby, like I just said. I don't know if the FBI would ask him to do that and he would comply with it. However, I think that's a possibility. And then Gabby Petito's family, so the Petito and the Schmidt family lawyer, released a statement on behalf of them, and it said, quote, "I want to personally thank the press and news media for giving the Petito and Schmidt family time to grieve. We will be making a statement when Gabby is home. I will contact you to arrange a time and location," unquote. And people really like to look into every little word and every little detail, looking for clues and hints. And after Gabby's body was found, everybody was like, well, they don't know if for sure it's her. Probably, what if it's not her? And I think, these people kind of just wanted to remain hopeful that she wasn't deceased, or that, the other side didn't want her to be deceased because there's some defending Brian, or whatever the case may be. They weren't believing it. But this happens in every case. They're able to tell certain things, and they said that it was consistent with the description of Gabby. So she had some tattoos, and they had her height and her weight and all of that, right? So they also announced that they found her body, and it was believed to be her, and they also told her family. And whilst, yes, once in a blue moon they may get it wrong, it's really, really rare. But it's protocol that it's not confirmed until the autopsy is done, right? And then they can fully confirm for legal purposes that this is Gabby Petito. So those people who were like, we don't know for sure it's her, even after they said it was her, when they seen this statement and they saw, quote, "we will be making a statement when Gabby is home," unquote, people were actually commenting under this going, when Gabby's home, so it wasn't her, she is alive. And I'm like, are these people for real right now? Home, you usually share with the people you love, right? I think it's safe to assume that they meant when Gabby's body is returned home where the people who loved her are. Doesn't mean that Gabby's still alive out there and this was all a big misunderstanding, guys, okay? You don't have to dissect everything. Not every single little thing. It's just not necessary. You'll drive yourself bonkers. It also looks like the police are taking a back seat at this point in Northport. They're still involved, but prior, when she was still missing, they were conducting a lot of interviews, making a lot of statements, giving interviews on TV. And, now that she's not missing and they found her, there's no real reason to get her name out there because, well, we located her, right? And now this is a hunt for Brian Laundrie, and so, they have now let the FBI basically handle this, and because they're referring people in the media to contact the FBI Denver office for any statements. What kind of sucks about this, to be honest with you, is in my experience, the FBI is much more tight-lipped than the local police usually are. And we've been getting kind of hints and clues and information from the Northport police. If they're now referring everybody to the FBI, this is likely that we will not get as much information in the days to come unless something, of course, big happens. But we'll have to see. And I'm seeing a lot of talk about Brian, why is he not a suspect yet? And I said earlier, they have to be able to connect him to this crime. And some of these reports that they're waiting on do take time. We just have to be patient. It can happen at any moment. And doesn't mean that the FBI currently doesn't have anything against him. They clearly do. At minimum, they have circumstantial. But they're also not going to share everything with us. So they actually might have more. It's just not enough to officially name him yet as a suspect or make an arrest. But as far as circumstantial evidence here, I think that's pretty obvious, right? He knew where he left her, and he knew what happened to her, because for the most likely, he knew what happened to her, right? So, of course, that's circumstantial evidence. You were with her, then you left, and she's dead. So, but they might have more. They're not going to tell us everything, and we don't want them to make any mistakes. We don't want them to jeopardize this in the event that it does go to trial. We want to make sure that her family can get justice for Gabby. And I was thinking about this Carlton Reserve, and people keep asking me if I think that he killed himself, or if he's out there, or did he leave the country, I don't know. I think Brian is cowardly, for sure. He's definitely shown that. So I think it is possible he's already dead, and has been since the beginning of last week when he first went quote-unquote missing. At the same time, I'm not totally sold on that. I don't think that the police are in Carlton Reserve just based on the parents' word. I think the first day they were out there, it was based upon what they had said. But they were looking into the parents' story and trying to, confirm it. and then they went back after they did the search warrant. So this kind of makes me believe that they were actually able to find something that possibly led them back there. However, to stay out there in this 25,000 acre swampland with alligators and snakes and all of that, right? He would need to be pretty prepared and have a significant amount of food on him in his hiking bag and survival gear like knives and first aid kits, and he'd be basically sleeping with the alligators because it's just swampy and gross. And out there at night in the swamp with alligators? Hell no. I wouldn't do that. In my head, I actually think, like, this guy, if he's guilty, which I do lean that way, like, you were already out there in all these national parks. If you were wanting to flee, why didn't you just stay out there? Like, hide out in the freaking canyons? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense that you would come back here. It's just insane. I'm not saying that this proves that he's innocent, because he came back. No. I just want to know what was going on in his head. Now, that being said, I don't know that he can actually flee the country right now. We got this COVID thing going on. He can go and stow a boat out of, like, Miami, but, is he that smart? He can go down to the border in Mexico, sure. Again, how is he getting there? Because, I recently read a report that, don't quote me on this, I don't know the exact number, but I want to say 200 and something times a day, the average person is caught on a camera, whether it's at the bank, at the gas station, at Burger King, and Walmart, at school, at work, wherever. There's so much surveillance footage and ring door cameras and trail cameras and traffic cameras, and there's just so many that in 2021 it's not easy to just go on the run and make it to a destination. Now, can people do it? Yes, of course. Have people done it? Yes, of course. But we're talking about this, I don't know, he kind of looks like a punk, like this 23-year-old punk. Like, is he really capable of that? I'm not really convinced on that. I'm just not. And if he did do that, we'll know soon, because if he at all Googled or planned his route, if he was looking up certain locations, if he was looking up supplies that he would need or where to rent a car, whatever, they'll be able to get that from whenever they took from the home and his car and the van, and then they'll be able to go to those searches and then find the location of wherever he was looking up, and then pull up these video cameras and what have you, and they're going to be able to track him, right? So I'm just not convinced he's smart enough for that. I'm just not. This is why I actually think that there is a possibility that he is already dead. And I'm really hoping that's not the case, because that's just the easy way out. It's cowardly in a situation like this. And I want her parents to have justice. I want them to be able to, if he's involved and he did commit this crime, I want them to be able to sit in a courtroom and stare him down and say what they want to say to him and how they destroyed his life, and, for him to rot in prison, because that's not the easy way out. It's not a pleasant life, right? So I'm hoping that's not the case. But everybody keeps asking me what I think, and I just don't know, guys. I just don't know. There's been a lot of supposed sightings of him that people think they're seeing him in Alabama and certain parts of Florida, and they're catching him on camera in certain places. I'm not sold that any of those people or any of those sightings are Brian. I'm just not. They don't look like him. I'm not really buying that. He could be, though. He could. There's a lot of states in this country, and there's a lot of places he can go. But, I don't know. I guess we're all going to find out soon. Or at least I hope soon. I hope this doesn't drag on, and not only does this guy slip away, but, now disappears for possibly weeks, months, or years, and we're not hearing about this case for, until 2026. And it's like, oh my God, remember the Gabby Petito case? Well, they just found Brian Laundrie. Oh my God. That'd be terrible. So, yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't know where he is. I don't know what evidence the police have to believe that he may be in there still. I don't know if they believe that he's deceased. I know they've considered it. I've heard them say that. So, anyways, I want to talk about a few other things. I want to talk about his parents. And this is in no way defending them, please. I just need you to consider something here. I did say the other day that this is their son, this is their blood, and we all want to protect our children. And if you're not a parent, you don't understand that. And if you are a parent, you should understand that. That being said, I said that before he fled. And the fact that he fled on Tuesday and these parents brought his car back and then didn't report it to police until Friday, really bothers me, like, in a very big way. Yes, there's absolutely a possibility that they are eating him and that they helped him plan his escape. There's definitely a possibility there, right? And a lot of things definitely point in that way. At the same time, though, we can't just assume that the parents know. I'm not buying that Brian came home and was like, oh, I killed Gabby and I left her in this field. Okay, Mom and Dad, I'm going to go to my room and take a nap now. I just drove 35 hours. I don't think that's how it went down. I do think that he told them a story. I just don't think that he told them the right story. I think he told them something else. And for example would be, if he did go home in August, like it's been talked about, that we still don't have confirmation about, and then he returned, he might have shown back up the second time and said the same thing happened, and they were just like, oh, okay, until her parents started to contact them, and then they were like, Brian, why are they contacting us when you said that, she wanted to stay behind by herself? And then maybe he told them a different story. Now, we're all going to say, like, well, they should have known at that point that something was wrong, and again, this is their son. And we don't really want to consider the worst, right? We just don't. I was talking to another person who was the victim of a murder case in which they lost a relative. Several of them. And she said to me, she might be listening to this, and she said to me that when she first heard that they were missing, she did not even for a single second consider murder. That did not cross her mind for 2 days. It wasn't even like a blip in the brain, right? Because we don't always walk around thinking like, oh, did they murder this person? It also could be a protective thing that your brain does to you that you don't even want to consider that. But she said, I did not even consider murder. Like, that did not cross my mind. I was thinking this, I was thinking that, but murder was never something that I considered. And it ended up being murder, right? So there is that possibility here that these parents just really want to believe their son, and they don't want to believe that he's capable of something. And I just want to say that, if that's the case, and if he lied to them and he didn't tell them the truth, yes, their behaviors are wrong. It definitely doesn't come across great. And while Gabby's family is going through something that's 10,000 times worse than what the Laundrie family is going through, you also have to consider what they're going through, okay? Because if they now believe that their son was capable of this or did this, they now have to come to grips that the child that they raised ended up being a murderer. And that's not an easy thing to swallow. And they also have to come to grips with this girl who lived in their home is dead, and that they weren't cooperating at first, and they may be cooperating now. We don't know. So, I know people are going to get mad, but I'm not fully defending them. I'm just saying that we shouldn't automatically assume that they knew exactly what happened to her and that they knew exactly where she was. I don't think that's a safe assumption. I think we can assume more so that he told them a lie, and because it's their son, they wanted to believe him and they wanted to protect him. And then once he fled, they were hoping he would come back. And then they had to come to the realization he wasn't coming back and had to make the decision to contact the police. And that is if they're not involved or are not aiding him in his escape. That's a lot for a parent to digest. I mean, really think about that, if that's the case. So, let's just wait for more information on the parents. I know it doesn't look good. It really, really doesn't look good. Hey, this actually might be the complete opposite. They may be fully complicit in all of it. And that would be definitely a twist in the story, right? That these parents helped him in some way, aided him, funded him, or whatever to get away from facing the consequences of his actions. Time will tell. And so, I want to talk about the van. In the body cam footage, we see the van, and the back of the van is completely trashed. And I don't mean like garbage and stuff. I mean like everything in the back is kind of thrown all over the place, all over the floor, whatever. And when I first saw that, I thought in my head, okay, well, he jerked the car, or supposedly she did, and they hit this bump or this curb. And so that makes sense, right? That some things would fall over and kind of and drop off of shelves or whatever they had back there. Which, by the way, that van is super adorable. There's a spot for flowers. She had this little folding table that she added to the door so she can eat. There was a lot of baskets for organizing. Everything was really tight in the back of this van. Very, very cute. And when I was looking at the body cam footage again today and I saw the van, in my head I was like, all right, the context here is at some point during that day there was an argument about her wanting things clean because she talks about OCD and he talks about her being upset about having sand on his feet and being dirty, whatever. And in the context of that, I looked at the back of the van a little bit more closely, and to me, it looks more than just the car got jerked and everything kind of fell all over the place. Excuse me. I had to pause because I had the hiccups. I'm sure you don't want to hear that. But, so anyway, in my opinion, it looked more than that. And I've had a lot of friends that I've been friends with who are couples. And I've personally seen that when one of them is complaining about something, the other will push their buttons and do exactly what they're complaining about to piss them off, okay? And it made me wonder if at one point the initial argument or a different argument that day was about the back of the van and she was possibly complaining about him leaving stuff out, not putting it back where it goes, or having sand on his feet, you know, when he got in the van, or whatever, right? And if he spitefully, to make her more angry, started taking the stuff and kind of throwing it around the back of the van, throwing it on the floor, and just trying to really trigger her more in a defiant type of way. Believe it or not, it's something that's commonly done with couples that I've seen, at least. Not saying that happens in my house, but I have seen it done. So when I looked at that, I thought, well, that's interesting. Is that a possibility that there was triggering going on here? Because you also have him trying to lock her out of her van, which is also triggering, right? It's making her feel a certain way by locking her out of that van, which would just set somebody off, no matter who it is. You, me, her, doesn't matter. If somebody's locking you out of your own car, you're going to be triggered and pissed off, aren't you? Yeah. I'd be like, let me in my freaking car. Kidding me? So that's just something that I wanted to break up real quickly. And I also wanted to talk about a statement that was released today. Now, when I first seen this today, I was really bothered because, we had the incident report written out in words. Then the next day we got the body cam footage. Okay. And then yesterday, after a few days since the body cam footage was released, we heard a 911 call where that witness said that Brian was hitting and slapping her, meaning Gabby. And that really upset me yesterday. And I said that Gabby showed signs of abuse, and I listed off to you all the things that I saw that were abuse from the moment she stepped out of the van. Now, I'm not an expert. It's just what I noticed when I watched the body cam footage. And my AC just went on, so sorry about that. And it really bothered me that, in the body cam footage, she was made to be the aggressor, and he was the victim when this person clearly said that it was Brian who was being aggressive towards her, and so I was annoyed. And then today, when I made my video earlier today, I had heard in the body cam footage, because I had been watching it again, that at one point one of the officers is speaking to Brian, and he says, well, she didn't say you hit her, and you're saying you didn't hit her, and the witness didn't tell us that you hit her. And I'm like, wait, what? And I was so confused, and it just made me even more angry, because I'm like, why is this officer saying that the witness, didn't say that Brian was hitting her when he very clearly says that in the 911 call? And, I wondered, is this an operator issue? Did the operator not communicate with the officer properly? Did he misunderstand the operator? What the hell is going on here that this was said in the 911 call, and yet she was the aggressor? And shortly after that video today, they released a statement, and at first I was really freaking confused. And then I started thinking about it, and I read it again, and I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense, but now I'm confused, but in a different way. So this statement is the witness statement. Now, when you call 911, right, they're not going to go to the witness and get the witness's version of events first. They're going to try to find the person, and then they're going to go to the witness after to get that witness to sign a statement, okay? So this person whose statement was written up is who the officer went to after dropping Brian off at the hotel and telling Gabby to take the van, and after he already had spoken to both of them. And I'm going to read it to you, but then I'm going to talk about it, because this really threw me off today, and then I had to kind of figure it out, okay? It's really, really hard to read, by the way. Like, extremely hard to read. The handwriting is awful, so bear with me here. It says, at approximately 4:30 p.m., I arrived at Moonflower. While standing on the south side of the street, I think it says observed a man and a woman appeared to have some sort of dispute. They were taking... goodness, this handwriting is awful. They were taking something at each other, and something seemed off. Maybe it says hits. I can't tell. At one point, they were sort of fighting over a phone. Remember that, because I'm going to come back to that. It appeared that he didn't want her in the white van. He got into the driver's side. She followed him. And at one point, she was punching him in the arm and trying to get in the van. I kind of wonder if this person's a doctor, because the handwriting is awful. Anybody who knows doctors' handwritings is like, oh, sorry, my table. It's just terrible. But she eventually climbed in or over him and over the passenger to the passenger seat. I heard her say, "Why do you have to be so mean?" I wasn't sure how serious this was, and it was hard to tell if they were sort of play fighting. But from my point of view, something definitely didn't seem right. It was as if the guy was trying to leave her and maybe take her phone. Not sure, but wanted to help out. I noticed another person had called this in, and as I left the store, I noticed a police officer, and I gave him my contact info, and then it's signed. So, when I saw this, I thought that this was the statement of the 911 caller we heard yesterday, but then at the bottom it says that he knew that somebody else was, had called this in, and it also said that he was, out of the car where the 911 caller said he had been driving by. So this statement is a different witness from the actual 911 caller. So there was multiple witnesses that called this in, okay? So I was very confused until I made that connection. I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's more than 911 call. So, and I said that yesterday, I said, it's possible that there was two, but why would they release one and not the other? I'm still not sure why they would do that. It's kind of frustrating because it'd be good to have both witnesses at the same time. And what's fascinating to me is he was contacted after these officers spoke with Gabby and Brian, and they came to the conclusion that, she was the aggressor. And I don't know if the officer shared this information with the witness when he went to go see him. I don't know if he actually wrote this up or the officer did. I don't know. And you can tell that this guy is basically saying that they could have been play fighting, but that his instinct was that this was something more and he wanted to help out and something didn't seem right. And he mentions that he heard her say, "Why are you so mean?" Which is so fascinating. Oh my gosh. Because what does Gabby say? It's like one of the first things she says when she gets out of the car. She goes, "I'm so mean. I was being mean," or whatever she said. She referred to herself as mean. Where this guy is saying he heard her say to him, "Why are you being so mean?" So, this is fascinating to me because was this turned on her? Was she saying to Brian, "You're so mean," and he was turning on her saying, "No, you're so mean." And this is why she got out of the car saying, "I'm so mean," or whatever she said that referred herself to being mean. So he also goes on to say that it appeared that he was trying to leave her and tried to take her phone. This was from his point of view, that Brian was trying to take her phone and take her van and leave her. So then he says that, she was punching him in the arm and that she ended up climbing in over into the passenger seat. This particular witness did not mention Brian hitting and slapping Gabby. Now, much of this statement sounds like he came into witnessing this at the tail end right before they got in the van, right? So he was witnessing that they were fighting over something, some sort of fight over the phone, and it was her phone. And then he says that it appeared that he was trying to leave her and get in the white van, that he got in the van, and that when he got in the van, or he was trying to get in the van, she was punching him in the arm. This is important because he's not really talking about what happened prior to when they were climbing into the van, because this sounds like he came in on that part. The 911 caller sounded like he saw what happened and what led up to when they got into the van, because the 911 caller said that Brian was hitting her, and then they started to walk up and down the sidewalk, and then they got in the van. So he witnessed, that 911 caller witnessed what happened prior, and it sounds like this witness witnessed, but yeah, the part where he's getting in the van and trying to leave her. That's key. Why is that key? Because if Brian was doing what the 911 caller witness said that we heard so far, because we didn't hear this other 911 call, if that's what he saw, right, and that's what happened, that means that Brian was hitting and slapping Gabby, taking her phone, and then trying to leave her in the van. And then here comes the second witness saying Gabby was punching him in the arm. So I go back to you and I say, if a guy was hitting you and slapping you, taking your phone and trying to take your van and abandon you, what are you going to do? You're going to follow him, you're going to attack him, you're going to punch him, you're going to push him, you're going to try to claw on him, you're going to try to slap him, you're going to try to kick him in the you-know-what area, right? You're going to try everything to stop him from taking your phone and your van and leaving you completely abandoned in an area you don't know with no transportation and no access to a phone. Right? I hope that's the right answer. I think, you can also run away and call the police, but then he still gets away with the van. I mean, yeah, you can do that too, but if this is an abusive relationship, she's not going to want to do that out of fear, okay? And anybody who's still running around saying that she was the aggressor because he had scratches on him, I really am not understanding your thought process. I'm really trying not to get angry here. It's really hard not to. What is your point? Again, Gabby's like 115 pounds soaking wet. You think that she was just, for no reason, just willy-nilly, just like, I'm just going to start scratching this guy because he's pissing me off? I mean, some women do that. But what was her motive for that? Or does it make more sense that this guy took her phone and was trying to take her van and leave her stranded? So she was like, oh, hell no, I'm going to scratch this dude. I don't know. What do you think it is? Wouldn't you be bothered? Wouldn't you feel triggered? Brian's like, oh, I was trying to de-escalate the situation. No, he escalated the situation. The last thing you're going to do in the middle of an argument is try to get in your girlfriend's van, despite you're living in it with her, and try to abandon her and take her phone. That's the last thing you do, okay? So, this is going to lead me to the next part, and I'm almost done because it's going to take forever to load. The longer the video, the longer it takes. This incident on 8/12, at first I'm like, it helps, it gives us insight, it definitely plays a role in what ended up happening later. But now with this 911 call and the fact that she is dead, and we know she's dead, it's become a little bit more important now than it was before. And I want to talk about two things, or actually maybe three things, about that body cam footage that I noticed after watching it yet again. And I highly suggest people watch things several times, because every time you do, you catch something you didn't catch the previous times. It happens to me all the time, okay? And when I was listening to it again today, I noticed a few things. Why, for starters, why would he be taking her phone? Now, her phone was access to her family, to call them and let them know how she is, if she needs help, if she needs money, right? But her phone was also probably used highly to manage her social media accounts, her YouTube channel, her blog, and all the things, that she wanted to do with those. And we know that was important to her, and that Brian did not support her in this blog, according to her. So, you have to wonder, was he taking his phone because he was going to leave her and take her van, and he didn't want her to have access to a phone? Well, maybe, right? But it doesn't really matter. She didn't have a phone, because if she was near a store like the Moonflower, she could have just gone in there and used their phone, right? So I'm not really totally sure that was the case. But 2, is it possible that the initial argument was over her blog, and it bothered him because she was focusing on the blog, and since he didn't support her in it, he's like, I'm taking your phone, you're not doing this anymore, which is controlling, by the way. That's a controlling thing, right? And this is what sparked their argument. I think it's more so that. I think, why else would you be taking her phone? Unless there was an argument about the phone. And usually couples' arguments about a phone is if one of them is cheating, right? Like, let me see your phone, let me look through your phone. They were out in the middle of these national parks together for 2 months. I highly doubt he suspected that she was cheating on him, and while they were together 24/7. So I don't think that's why he took her phone. And that would be with a lot of couples, not this particular couple. So there's a reason why he was taking this phone. So it's really either he was suspecting that she was cheating on him. I highly doubt that he was trying to take this phone because he had planned to abandon her. Again, I don't think so, because she can get a phone easily, especially that there was all these witnesses, so she could have easily went and asked one of them. Or 3, he was annoyed that she was focusing on the blog and her social media and possibly wasn't paying attention to him, or he wanted to go do something and she didn't want to because she was working on her blog, because she was dedicated and driven to getting it going. That sounds more likely to me. 2 other things. The initial story, meaning the 911 call and the now second statement from a witness, was never actually discussed in the traffic stop. Now, that's why they went to go find the van, but once they found the van, they pulled it over because it was speeding and hit the bump, and because of the 911 call. But when you get her out of the van, they start talking and what have you, and the scratches are noticed and all that, and she kind of says that they had a rough day and they had been arguing all day. Did you notice that they actually don't talk in deep detail about the actual incident that sparked the 911 and the other witness? That's the whole reason why they were even brought to these officers' attention. But the focus was mostly on what happened inside the van prior to him stopping, meaning when she grabbed his, according to her, she grabbed his arm, and he said that she grabbed the wheel, right? So, this leads me to, there's also the conflicting story here, right? He said she pulled the wheel. She said she pulled his arm. That alone, the fact that they had a conflicting story, is important enough that the officer should have said, okay, what's really going on here? There's more to this, because we got this 911 call, 2 of them, apparently, and we have conflicting stories, even though it was noted that all the stories were consistent, which is actually not true. And not only was there an incident prior to me pulling them over, but there was also an incident while I was tailing them to pull them over, and they ended up hitting a curb. Again, I'm not law enforcement. I never have been, and never will be, but I really think that these officers need to put out some form of statement of some kind to address these things, because this is really upsetting, and I don't know what role it plays in her future death. They're not, fortune tellers. They are not psychics. They couldn't foresee what was going to happen, but why was so much overlooked here? Why did the officer say to Brian, well, you said you didn't hit her, and she said you didn't hit her, and the witness said you didn't hit her, when a witness did hit her? What's the explanation for that? What's the explanation for why the whole reason you were in their presence was because of people contacting you about an incident that happened, and yet you focused in only on what happened that you saw happen in front of your eyes? Why was that overlooked? And why was there not more concern that their stories were not consistent with each other, yet it was noted that they were? Nobody's at fault for Gabby's death except for the person who killed Gabby. However, that doesn't mean that there weren't some people who possibly made mistakes along the way, that intervention could have happened at some point. That's not to say that Gabby would have taken that intervention, because oftentimes people who are abused do not. But there's always the importance of at least trying to. Now, the female officer came out today, or the director of the park area, and said that she had told Gabby probably more than she should have about how she deserved better and what have you. Okay, that's great. Wonderful. So that leads me to ask the next thing. Is it possible that 2 weeks later Gabby was done with the relationship because things didn't change and she was thinking back to her best friend warning her about the relationship and this other officer who was a female telling her, and she was like, you know what, I'm done, I'm going back home, I don't want to continue on this trip with you anymore, and she basically broke it off with Brian? That's totally possible. Do I believe that? Nah, not really, because she seemed to be very attached to him, and that can be associated with abuse. However, it's possible, right? And I don't know if you know this, but the absolute worst time, the most dangerous time in a relationship is when you are leaving the person, especially in an abusive relationship. So, was this a case of not an argument that transpired between the two that led to her death? Was this she was ending the relationship because she was tired of the arguments, and therefore he flipped because he was losing her? Something to think about. And to go back to the theories, like I said earlier today, we're down to he intentionally killed her, he unintentionally killed her, or he was killing her in self-defense. Now, could Gabby have been a threat to Brian physically? I don't believe that, no. Could she have been a threat with him with a weapon? Yes, of course, absolutely, right? If she was waving a gun or a knife, or she was trying to hit him with the car, or she was hitting him with a branch, yeah, of course, then yes, he would be in danger from her, and therefore self-defense would come in. Intentional would be, of course, he was fighting with her, and it wasn't like a snap, and he was just like, you know what, I'm killing her, I'm done with her, and kills her. Unintentional would be like they're arguing and he pushed her and she falls and cracks her skull, whatever. Regardless, it still would be a homicide, but those are really the only theories at this point, unless the autopsy changes or is challenged. And let's say that it was an accident, right? They're arguing, he's pushing, she's pushing him back, they're going at it, okay. And she falls, she cracks her head open, whatever the case may be, right? You gotta think, would he have left that area, returned home, not told anybody, not contacted anybody, and lawyered up, and then flee in the midst of all this? Because you have to remember, when he fled, Gabby was not, to us, deceased, right? We didn't know she was deceased at that time. We kind of figured it, but we didn't know that. So we didn't know if a crime had taken place, right? And so, what are you running from, right? Why is your lawyer saying that often in these situations, the significant other or spouse of the person, becomes a suspect, right? Which is true. Absolutely is that true. But at that point, we didn't even know there was a crime committed. So why are you hiding out from being falsely accused for a crime when at that time we didn't even know a crime had been committed yet, unless you knew there was a crime that had been committed? Do you see what I'm saying here? Okay. Why not, if they did get into an argument and there was an accident, he shoved her and she hit her head on something, wouldn't you have just called the park rangers and be like, oh my God, we were hiking and she slipped? She most likely would have defended him, right? Or not remembered what happened. And he could have just reported it and saved her life or whatever, okay? If it was intentional, well, that's freaking horrible that he, like, intentionally during an argument or, heck, while she's sleeping, he was just like, you know what, I'm just going to kill her. Or, you know, self-defense, which we already discussed. But again, when he got a lawyer and when he fled, at that time, there wasn't a crime, at least not to anybody's knowledge. Yet he was dealing with this like there had been a crime already. That doesn't make sense, okay, at all. When we didn't even know that was happening. So why did he flee? Unless he knew there had been a crime committed. Again, I've tried and tried and tried to get this guy the benefit of the doubt. I've thrown him bones. I've tried to stay unbiased through every single video, and I've done a lot about Gabby. I've tried to remain neutral and rational and consider every possible thing. But I can't do it anymore. He knew a crime was committed. He did. That's why he left. That's why he didn't report her missing. That's why he didn't tell anybody he left her behind. That's why he didn't tell anybody that she accidentally hit her head and died. It's why he hid out in his parents' home, waiting for them to notice, and then them notice, him getting a lawyer, and him saying, well, now they noticed, I gotta get the hell out of here, and why he fled. Come on. I mean, that's the reality of the situation here. There's that slight possibility that she was killed by somebody else, right? Very slight possibility. What are the odds of that? What are the odds that he left her behind, which would be really shitty and horrible to do, right? Regardless. And she ended up murdered by somebody else. And he did all these things after the fact, and it turns out that, you know, it wasn't him. He just did all these crazy things, and, you know, he didn't kill her. What are the odds of that? I think it's pretty damn slim, don't you think? I think so too. But he's innocent until proven guilty. I'm not making any accusations, Mr. Laundry, if you hear this. But if you do hear this, wherever you are, come on out. You have some questions to answer. Now, he definitely is not listening to this. Well, I don't think he's that dumb. I think he's dumb, but I don't think he's that dumb to be on any type of social media at this point, so they can easily track him. But anyway, I'm just saying that it ain't looking good for Mr. Laundry, guys. It's just not. I mean, you can keep trying to defend him. Go for it. I think it's great that people are considering all possibilities. I've done that already. This is my conclusion. So, on that note, we're at an hour and 8 minutes. This is going to take forever to upload. So, I'm going to end this for the night. I'm going to go eat and get into bed. I did a couple of videos today about several missing people. I did an update on missing Khaleesi, who's 3 years old. She is no longer with us. That was the update. You can watch that video. Please follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. At stillspeakpod, please, so that we can help these families spread stories of people missing quickly through these platforms. And I'm going to be working on the next part of my series about the 3 missing little boys, and also my part 5 episode of the Caitlin Conley story. If you've not listened to those, go take a listen and join the discussion. And until next time, have a wonderful evening. And hopefully by the time you're hearing this, most of you are probably in bed, so you'll probably be hearing it tomorrow morning instead. So until next time, I'll see you soon.